How are you doing with your boundaries? That's what we're talking about in today's episode. I am Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change pain into possibilities and possibilities into purpose. I do hope you like and subscribe on the channel if you haven't already. I upload content twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, around holistic healing and personal development. I also now do a podcast called The Holistic Pathway that is uploaded every Saturday, where I'm currently talking with entrepreneurs all over the globe about the holistic journey, mind, body, spirit, and entrepreneurship. So, a little bit about how I got here. I have an extreme history of severe trauma, abuse, and loss, and I've gotten to the other side of complex post traumatic stress disorder. I went through a profound spiritual awakening in 2014 and ended up using everything that I have received on my journey to help other people get to the other side of whatever pain they're experiencing and helping them see possibilities. I am a transformational spiritual coach, a hypnotherapist, a yoga nidra facilitator, yoga teacher, and so much more, bringing those tools in to help you get to whatever it is that you would like to get to in your life. So let's talk a little bit about these boundaries. Well, I was probably 38 years old before I knew boundaries, before I knew how boundaries pertain to me. I grew up in a situation where boundaries weren't something I really understood. My boundaries were constantly not something I was allowed to have. And therefore, I did not know how to create boundaries for myself. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. Have you found setting boundaries to be really difficult, or are you someone who sets really strong boundaries without any movement? I used to say that a lot of times when people are learning boundaries, they sort of go from uh, doormat to no boundaries whatsoever to, excuse the language, raging bitch sometimes on the other level, because we don't know how to set boundaries. And so we have to get really strong and really angry to try to get people to listen to us. So it's sort of like this pendulum swing, right? You're over here to over here, and you're trying to find your middle, what actually works for you. And this was such a challenging thing for me. And as I began to study boundaries and try to understand boundaries, it felt like the most complicated thing to me. I could not get it. If I set a boundary, I felt like I was being a horrible person. I felt like it meant I didn't care about other people if I set boundaries. Have you had any of those feelings? So let's talk about the three places. Actually, I'm going to do four places where you it's important to have boundaries. One is around physical boundaries, and the physical boundaries are around your physical body. So let's think about, how do you feel about being touched? Have you created boundaries around being touched, around when it's okay for someone to touch you versus when it's not? So that one's really important. There are also comments about your appearance or your body, or just something about you physically. How does that feel for you? So you begin to notice what is okay and what is not okay. Also, allowing someone to be in your personal space. Can they come all the way up in your personal space, or do you need some distance in your personal space? Have you set those kinds of boundaries for yourself? Number two is our emotional or mental boundaries. That is, how comfortable do you feel sharing your thoughts, sharing your opinions, sharing your beliefs? How comfortable do you feel choosing what you share? there was a time in my life where I gave away my power. And what I mean by that is I would be so excited, let's say, about a new idea or something I was thinking about, and I would share it with someone and they would shoot it down or immediately tell me why it wouldn't work or some other thing. And at that point, I wasn't strong enough in my own boundaries to set a boundary with that. And so I took that in and it would completely deflate me. And something I was so excited about would just get tossed away. So over time, I learned, first of all, when I will share and when I won't share. And I'm also strong enough now that I can share at any stage of the game and not be thrown off track. So that's really important. Also, on the emotional and mental boundaries is how much are you willing to allow others to share? Um, can you can you step back and allow someone else to have their time to shine? Or, what's happening with that? So those are some things to kind of think about. Next is your resources, how setting how and when and where you are going to spend your time and energy, setting boundaries around that. Also, it's around avoiding taking responsibility for the emotions of other people, feeling like you have to fix it. I've been challenged with this one a lot throughout my life, growing up the way that I did. I often had over responsibility for things, feeling overly responsible for fixing whatever the situation was, whatever drama, trauma, uh, chaos was happening. It fell on me to feel like I needed to fix it. And I have to really watch for that, even though I've been working at boundaries for years now. I have to watch when I slip into that tendency again. Also, getting to the point of recognizing your own energy and the limiting of people venting to you. Sometimes it's important that we know or we discover that someone venting to us actually wears us out. And can we have enough boundary and enough protection for ourselves to say, can we get back to this? I'm feeling drained right now. Can we come back to this another time? Something like that. Also, I like to consider boundaries with myself, thinking about, I'm in a yoga therapy program right now, and we talk a lot about being past our edge. Well, the edge is something that's different for every person, but setting boundaries for myself helps me to decide if I'm, really wanting to finish something and I'm having trouble being motivated, can I create a boundary for myself that says, okay, well, you're going to have this amount of time to rest and then it's time to get going. Or I may have the opposite where I'm going, 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 and I have to set a boundary with myself and say, now it's time to pause. Now it's time for your self-care. So those are 4 areas to consider. What are your boundaries in these areas? You're around your physical body, around your emotional and mental health, around your energy or your resources, and boundaries you set with yourself. And then to look at, where are you? Are you super rigid like a brick wall that's unmoving with your boundaries? Are you loosey-goosey like there's no boundary at all? Just everybody come in, dump your crap on me. Are you there? Or are you someone who has flexible boundaries, which I think is the best place to be? Flexible, I see that being a bit like kind of waves of an ocean, right? Where it's very strong. Water is very strong and powerful, but it's also moving. It's also in motion. So you can have the strength of the ocean and also the flexibility of the ocean. And sometimes boundaries change. Sometimes boundaries change based on your energy levels. Sometimes boundaries change depending upon a person. There was a time in my life, thinking about physical body, there was a time in my life I did not like being hugged. I didn't like it. It invaded my space. Now I'm a hugger, but I hug with permission. If someone doesn't want to hug, then I'm not going to force a hug on them. So there's some flexibility in there. There is recognizing, being so in tune with my body, with my emotions, with my energy, with my tendencies as a person, to know how to set the best boundaries for me. And sometimes I need hard boundaries. Sometimes those rigid boundaries are things I need. There are other times where I might have a little bit of loosey-goosey boundary. And maybe that's, let's say, as an example, um, let's say it's a weekend day or a weekday where I don't have commitments to other people. And maybe I feel like, oh, there's all these things on my to-do list, but I go, today feels like a self-care day, or today feels like a lounging day, or today feels like a day where I'm just not going to do the things, whatever the things are. So that on those days, I would say it still falls into flexible, really, because when you get into flexible, you can give yourself permission to do what you need to do. You can move and change your boundaries as you need to, depending upon what your needs are for that day. Does that make sense? I would like to know, how are you doing with boundaries? Has this been easy for you? Has it been hard for you? It was terribly hard for me. And now to be at a point where I can actually show and teach people how to set their boundaries. What I like to say is, when you have become someone who knows your boundaries and they're very clear and you're very strong in your boundaries, even flexible boundaries, especially flexible boundaries, you don't even really have to state them verbally anymore. It's energetic. People recognize that you have a boundary and they don't push it. One example I wanted to give is, there was a time in my life where I seemed to be constantly picking people up out of jail. People I knew were continuously going to jail, and I was the one that they would call. And for a time, that felt good to me, like, oh wow, I'm the person that they would call and when they needed help. And over time I realized, well, I don't think this feels good. Like, why am I the go-to person when someone is in trouble, right? And first of all, why do I have all these people in my life that are always in trouble? That was a boundary I needed to figure out. I also began to realize, having my sleep interrupted because of someone else's agenda maybe was a boundary that I needed to set. So have you found these places in your life where maybe a boundary felt like, oh yeah, this is great, and then later you realize, mm, I don't really think this is in service of me anymore. And how can I start to make changes in my life so that I don't have these circumstances going on anymore? So, yeah, let me know about that. And so, in summary, think about your physical body, your emotional and mental space, body, your energetic body, your resources, and your boundaries with yourself. Are you in rigid, flexible, or loose? How are you doing with your boundaries? So if you need help or support with boundaries or anything else you've got going on in your life, I do offer a free holistic consultation where we spend some time together talking about what you have going on, what I have going on, and to see if we're a great fit. I am a coach. I am not a counselor. What we are doing is we are looking at where you are right now and getting you moving forward, figuring out what obstacles are keeping you from moving forward, and helping you find the possibilities. So please do like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This is Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change pain into possibilities and possibilities into purpose. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.